Hey everyone, welcome to the Dram Amateur Podcast, your go-to show for everything bourbon, whiskey, rum, tequila, mezcal, and beyond. I'm your host, Jason. Join me as I journey and explore the world of alcoholic spirits. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Dram Amateur Podcast. My name is Jason. Thank you guys all so much for joining and listening today. I certainly appreciate it. Today's episode, we're going to talk about farm-to-glass bourbon distilleries in the U.S. I have two distilleries we're going to cover, and this kind of came to mind from a recent trip that I took over to Munich, Germany. I'll tell you a little bit about that here in a little bit. But first, I've had an interesting few days. First of all, this is being dropped on Tuesday, right after Labor Day weekend. I hope you guys all had a great Labor Day weekend. I certainly did. I had 5 days off, which was great, and I really enjoyed myself. Thursday was a lot of fun. That started my kind of 5-day long weekend. We played in a golf charity tournament. So myself, my friends Alan and Troy, and then one of Alan's friends, Adam, we played in a charity golf tournament on Thursday. It was fun. It was a scramble. I haven't played golf in a long time. Go to the driving range occasionally, hit balls, that kind of thing, but really haven't played on a golf course in a while. I did okay. It was a lot of fun. We started at 9 at a scramble, and we had a great time going and playing. I had, Cart Girl comes around. I bought some tequila with us. Cart Girl came around. We had Jack and Gingers and vodka sodas and tequila, and yeah, it was a good fun time. We had a great time. I hit a few good shots. I can't tell you that I'm good at golf. I still need some practice. Definitely need some practice. Definitely need to play more. Very different than going to like a driving range or something like that, but definitely had a great time doing it. Great time with all my friends and everything too. So we had fun. It was funny because during the tournament, I rode with Troy. And Troy and I were talking, and Troy's like, "Hey, man, maybe I'll come over." And his wife was busy, and he's like, "Maybe I'll come over and do a podcast." And I was like, "Yeah, man, that'd be awesome. Like, come on over." I'm like, "I could use some content." I'm like, "I got a busy month ahead. I have to travel for work. I also have a family trip." I'm like, "Yeah, it'd be perfect." So he came over about 6:15 on Thursday night. And he brought over a bottle of Rye 3 Madeira finish, and I didn't know that he brought it. So when he walked in, I'm like, "Hey, let's go upstairs. We'll pick out a few bottles, drink, and we'll shoot the shit on the podcast." Well, he pulled out the Rye 3 Madeira, and I'm like, "Oh, this is perfect." I'm like, "I'll go upstairs." I've never had Belle Meade Madeira. I have bottles of it, just never drank it. So I went upstairs and grabbed a bottle. And I'm like, "Man, this would be really cool. We'll do a comparison between the two. I know one's bourbon and one's rye, but still, I'm like, it'd be kind of cool to do a comparison between the two." So we set everything up, sat down at the table downstairs in my house, was having a great podcast, literally fantastic podcast. And then dumbass me, I have no idea how I did this. I really don't, but I've already bought things to help to prevent this in the future. I'll tell you here in a minute. But dumbass me had a Glencairn next to his computer. It really wasn't. It was, 6 inches away, 4 inches away. And I turned and I swung back around and knocked the Glencairn off onto my laptop. It was an old MacBook Air. Given to me by my wonderful mother-in-law about 5 years ago. She had it for a few years and then wasn't using it, and then she gave it to me. So I sat there and was like panicked, right? So I lifted the glass up really quick, and I looked in the bourbon glass, and I had about, an ounce and a half, 2 ounces in the glass. I'm going to go more on the 2 ounce side. I picked it up really quick, and I was like, "Oh shit." And I was a little bit like on the keyboard. So like the very first 2 rows of the keyboard down toward the front of the computer. So I quickly, like mid podcast, like literally mid podcast, Pick this thing up, dry it, right? I looked at the glass, I only spilled about an ounce, so it really wasn't too bad. Dried everything off. I looked kind of down where the keys were, and it looked fine, right? I was like, all right, this isn't too bad. We're still going. Computer's still working. Got everything dried off, and we were good. 20 minutes later, all hell broke loose. I'm sitting here and we're talking still, right? And I think what bugs me the most is like I had really good content between me and a guest, which I don't have too frequently a guest on, not good content. I have great content when guests come on, but I had good content. We had a good discussion about Rye 3 Madeira and the Belle Meade Madeira, and we were even looking to see what Madeira was, and we were talking about that. So like it was like exactly where I wanted to go as a podcast, right? It was educational and all those things as well. And then I sit there and I have headphones on, and Troy's got headphones on, and I hear like, and there's like this like jet engine. I'm like, what the hell is going on? So I cracked the headphone off my ear. And it was my MacBook. Like the fan was just going crazy, right? And I've never, ever heard my MacBook Air do that before. I've podcasted on it, recorded on it, and the whole 9 yards, right? Never, ever heard it do that before. So I didn't really think anything of it. I've only recorded, 2 or 3 times with two people on it. So I thought maybe it was because we had 2 headphones plugged in, which was the first time I had 2 headphones plugged in. Normally when I've recorded before in the past, I didn't have a splitter on my Scarlett. So I had a splitter on. So I was like, okay, maybe it's just that it's warm in the house. You know, it's summertime. I'm like, we've got 2 headphones plugged in. We got 2 mics plugged in. I'm like, maybe that's all it is, right? So we kept going. That fan went on for like 10 minutes or so. And then all of a sudden, GarageBand stops. And it throws an error code. And I was like, oh no. My heart sank. Like, my heart sank for 2 reasons. One, that we were like 45 minutes into a really good podcast. And I lost all of it potentially, which I did. And it was an awkward point. So like, I couldn't even like stop it. Like we were brainstorming afterwards. Troy's like, man, just stop it and just do like an outro and share like what happened. I'm like, man, it doesn't sound right. I'm like, we hadn't even got into the Rye 3 yet. Like we were just starting to nose the Rye 3 and enjoying it. And, yeah, so I sat there and like dried it off more, turned the computer off. And then my dumbass, I don't know why, this is just me, a little bit about who I am. I like shut off the computer, reboot it, try to log in. My keyboard and my mouse pad are not working at all. So I was like, shit. So I turned it off again, let it sit for a couple minutes, let it cool down. It wasn't hot, but I just let it like cool off, booted it back up, which in hindsight, looking back at it now, I shouldn't have done all this. But anyways, so I boot it back up. And I'm sitting there, and next thing you know, this still doesn't work. Keyboard doesn't work. Keypad doesn't work. I'm like, oh, shit. So I was like, all right. So I left it overnight. I let it sit out to dry. I'm like, tomorrow's a different day. It'll be fine. You know, I was more mad at that point that I had ruined the podcast. Because again, for me, recording content sometimes can be difficult. And to be honest with you, I really enjoy having guests. Like, I think it's really fun to be able to drink and enjoy, like where I'm talking the entire time. I don't really have a lot of time to drink. So drink and enjoy and just talk through stuff. It was fun. So went to bed next morning, got up, and I'm like, all right, first things first, I'm going to boot up the Mac. I went to go hit the power button on the thing. That damn computer didn't even boot up at all. It was like, nope, I'm dead. I'm not happening. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So like, I sat there and I was like, all right, maybe something happened with the battery. Like, I'll plug it in, right? So plugged it in, sat there for a little bit. Yeah, let it go, right? Hit the button again, nothing. Started Googling all these weird things, you know, hit command, blah, blah, Q, command option Q, command Q, control Q, all these different things. Not one thing worked. My MacBook Air was cooked, toast, done, DOA, RIP, horribly ruined. Looking back at it now, my friend Michael, Pints, Pipes, and Drams on Instagram, mentioned to me, he says, dude, he says, you know what? He says, bourbon was probably the worst thing to spill in it because it might crystallize, right? Because it's liquor and there's sugars in it. So like once it gets in there and if it got really hot and if it like boiled or bubbled or something, if it crystallized, I was like, damn it, dude, you're right. Like you're 100% right. So I had to, luckily for me, thank God that this happened. Everybody was running a sale on Apple MacBooks. I am not a big Apple guy, so I will share this with you ahead of time. I am not an iPhone guy. I am not an iPod guy, or earbuds, whatever the earbuds are. I used to be an iPod guy. Yeah, I loved iPods. I like my tablet. I like my iPad. But for computers, I mean, and phones, like I normally use Windows for work, and I use a Google phone. I'm a big Google guy for Android. And Bose for headphones and stuff like that. But for computers, like my personal computer, I absolutely loved that MacBook Air. Again, reflecting back on it, I didn't pay anything for it. My mother-in-law gave it to me. It was, I've had it for 5 years, more than 5 years, because I snagged it from her before we left their house and moved into our new house, and we've been here for over 5 years now. So yeah, I mean, it's like, it was fantastic. It tested that it would have kept going probably for another couple years. So hindsight, right? I didn't ever pay anything for it, and I used it for quite a long time. So I was like, need to go get a new one. Absolutely loved it. So did some research really quick on Thursday morning or Friday morning between the MacBook Air M3 and then the MacBook Pro 14-inch or 14.4-inch, whatever it is. Fun thing with all of that is the MacBook Airs were getting like $250 off on retail, where the MacBooks were getting like $500 off on retail. So I ended up going in with the MacBook Air M3, the 15-inch, was the same price as the MacBook Pro with the M3 chip, the M3 upgraded chip, and like 18.8 gigs of RAM, where the Air had 16 gigs of RAM. So like all these things, it just fell in line that it was a better deal. I think it grows with me more. So like if I ever look at doing video, audio, anything else with this podcast, it grows with me. And for the same price, I mean, why not get the better machine? So went and snagged that. So I'm back. I was originally supposed to record on Friday last week before the weekend, but that all kind of went out the window with the computer dying. That was done. So here I am, Labor Day, thankful for a day off of work to be able to record some content for you guys, and excited to to be back, man. This is the first time I plugged in my Scarlett to it, the mic, and I will share one thing. Everything I've done so far on this MacBook has been absolutely seamless, and this is why I love it for computers. A phone, I can tinker around with it a little bit more. I like it, but the MacBook being so seamless, I've downloaded Riverside, the app already on here, like got the video stuff set up if I want to do video, downloaded Canva for any of my stuff, literally plugged in my Scarlett 5 minutes before I did this podcast, everything booted right up on my GarageBand. It's so freaking simple. I really love Apple's for that purpose, especially for like my laptop, because it's just easier to do all these things. And plus, like the screen's fantastic. Like I can geek about it. This is not a podcast about computers, Jason. This is a podcast about spirits, liquor, and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to go off of this. So, all right, let's jump into our topic today. So this topic was, the topic today, let me refresh the topic. Topic today is grain to glass distilleries. And this was it piqued my interest from my recent trip that I took to Germany back in July. I had a Sunday before I had to transition from Munich down to a different town in Germany for my conference. And it was a rainy day. I was originally going to go to the concentration camp that's outside of Germany. I was going to go on like a walking tour, but it was in a rain all day. I didn't have an umbrella. I was like, no, I don't really want to do that. I'll do that another time. And I said, you know what? I'll go to the Science Museum. So there's a Science Museum in downtown Munich. Cool place, man. Huge, awesome. Probably wasn't my favorite museum, but it was cool. It was a lot of neat stuff. And I think the thing that really kind of got me the most was the agriculture section of and the farming section of the Science Museum. Got me from the cave. So in that area, they kind of go through a lot of things about agriculture, farming, all of that stuff. So bugs, chemicals, crops, and all that kind of stuff. Well, there was one section toward the end of the exhibit. It was this big square room in the middle of the exhibit with an open ceiling, so there was nothing above it. So it was just like walls that were thrown in the middle of the floor. And I went in there, and it was really cool. I was just literally just catching like the last 30 seconds of the video. And so when you walk in, there are benches that are set up kind of in the middle. It's a very artsy kind of feel when you step in. And the walls are all huge TVs. So picture them probably being 10 to 12 feet tall, all panels, and it just shows one big video across the full screen. So you feel like you're immersed in the experience. When I walked in, like it immediately drew me in. And I think it was just the way that it was filmed. I think it was the way that, and what it was about, right? So what it was a video about the planting and harvesting process for winter wheat in Germany. So it was pretty cool. So what it did was it had a still camera set up at a specific point in the a specific place in the field, and you could see maybe video-wise, you could probably see 30 yards of the field. So you had a video looking down and see 15 yards on either side or 20 yards on either side. And there was no voices. So it was just the sound of the environment, like from the world outside when, like so the wind blew or something like that. And then the birds chirped or a bug flew by or something like that. And it was the sound of the equipment doing the farming. So it started back in, it starts in like, I think the winter time. So it starts in the winter where the crops are kind of dying out. And it goes through, and you can see like the background, there's a house off to kind of the far right, but then it's all trees, at the end of the field, way off in the distance. So with that, you kind of see it, and it sits there for about, I'm going to say, it felt long. I'm going to say probably a minute and a half, 2 minutes. It might even be longer than 2 minutes. And it just focused on that field for 2 minutes. So nothing may have been happening for those 2 minutes, or a tractor may have driven by, or a bug flew by, or something like that, right? But you see the clouds moving and stuff. And then it would transition from like winter to like late winter, right? And you could see then the tractor drive by, and it would till up all of the dirt, right? So it was tilling up the dirt, getting everything ready for the planting, right? And then and you could see like the sky was a little bluer with like, passing clouds. Trees didn't have leaves on it yet. And then spring came, and they started planting, right? So like you could see like the video transition from that late winter to early spring. So you started seeing like buds on the trees far off in the distance. It was a little sunnier. And then they were planting. So they would go through the entire process. So planting, you'd watch it grow. So in the springtime, it would, like after planting, like it would fast forward for another 2 or 3 months or a month and a half, whatever it was. And you'd see the crop started growing up. And then they would spray it, right, for bugs or whatever, and then it would go through again. It would let's say late spring, or let's say early summer, right, and it would be like taller. So you went through the entire planting, growing, and harvesting process of winter wheat. That was really, really cool. It was. I don't know why, but I like things like that are just, I'm a very visual person. So for me, being able to sit in that room with as much silence as was in there, I mean, there was people walking around, right? And just really be immersed in that video, feeling like you were sitting there in a field on a bleacher watching this entire process unfold is really cool. I also like the way that the dynamics of the different seasons, right? So you literally see the seasons as they go. I like seeing the different clouds, the blue sky, the gray sky, the trees evolve, the trees turn color in the fall, the harvesting process, the color change, and even of the wheat and stuff like that too. So it was really, really cool. And one of the prettiest things that I've seen when you fly into Munich, there's a lot of those crop fields, right, that are those different colors, especially just taking the train from the airport into Munich. There's like crop fields, and they're just this golden hue of color, and it just goes on for, hundreds and hundreds of yards. It's really, really pretty. So I came home and started doing some research into grain to glass distilleries. And I thought it was pretty interesting to do a little bit of research on this. And there's a lot of them in the US. There's a lot of them globally, right? There's a lot of whiskey that's distilled across the world in the same fashion. But for me, I wanted to focus on just the US, and I just wanted to focus on like two, just to kind of not get too overwhelming, but tell a little bit of story about two specific distilleries. So when I was doing my research last week, I went ahead and found that Southern Distilling in Statesville, North Carolina, which is one of the products they produce, is one of my favorite bottles that I've had recently. That was one. The other one was Frey Ranch out in Nevada. I thought that was pretty cool too. So I'm going to go through a little bit of highlights about each of these, and then kind of share with you a little bit of information just to kind of, get you kind of understanding a little bit about each of them and what grain to glass distilling is. So grain to glass distilling is distilleries that do not truck their product in from somewhere else and grow the majority of their own grains to make their own bourbon, whiskey, whatever they want to make. So Southern Star Distilling is in Statesville, North Carolina. You guys know Southern Star Distilling because they have the Southern Star Wheated Bourbon Whiskey. They have a bottled and bond whiskey, and they have a single barrel whiskey as well. Bourbon, I should say, single barrel bourbon whiskey. They have a Southern Star Double Rye, and they also have a Southern Star Standard High Rye bourbon whiskey as well. The Southern Star Wheated Bourbon Whiskey, I think it's the barrel strength one, is the bottle that the pour that Nerds and Burbs turned me on to. I had never had it before. I had heard fantastic things about it, and Nerds and Burbs was kind enough to give me a sample of it. And when I had it, like literally fell in love with it immediately. It's fantastic. The quality's there. It's a great product, and definitely something that I was happy to go buy a bottle after that. So let me go through some facts about Southern Distillery and tell you a little bit about more who they are and their process as well. So they are the largest distillery in North Carolina. I didn't know if I knew that. And they're focused on sustainability. So they really want to build a sustainable environment to both grow their grains, harvest their grains, make bourbon, and do that in a sustainable nature. They produce a majority of the grains from their local farm. So they use 96% of the corn, 96% of the corn and the rye that they're using to make their bourbon. Unique things about their approach to growing and harvesting the grain is that they use regenerative agriculture focused on conservation and rehabilitative practices. So this is where the sustainability part comes in, really, right? So what regenerative, God, I can't talk today, y'all. I'm sorry. Agriculture is it means they're focused on the quality and preservation of the farm's topsoil. So if anybody's ever grown anything before, you realize how important your soil is for growth. So where I am now in Georgia, the soil is all red clay. So it is not very formidable to kind of grow things in. It can be very hard. It can be very dry, lack of nutrients, where compared to kind of where I grew up in the Northeast area was very different, right? The soil was very rich. It was very full of nutrients. So in the South, you have to really, really work on your soil and make sure that it has the nutrients it needs to grow crops or vegetables or whatever you're growing, right? And that's one of the reasons why when I grow something, I do it all in buckets. So like 5-gallon buckets or 10-gallon buckets. That way I can control the quality of the soil that goes into it, which means I get a healthier plant, water runoff, water retainage, all those things. I have a healthier plant that I can grow vegetables from. So soil is really important. They also are a no-till operation. So they don't till. So this helps to prevent runoff and soil erosion. Crops are seasonally planted, which naturally supports the replenishment of vital nutrients to ensure healthy soil. So that was really interesting as well. I guess there's different, and I didn't know this, there's different crops that are used and grown throughout the year that help to replenish the vital nutrients and health of the soil. Had no idea. I did not know that. Learned something new every day. The mash that they get from the leftover bourbon and everything, or when they're making the bourbon, I should say, is used to feed their local cattle. So really everything that they're using as part of their process, and goes back to the whole sustainability topic, is really focused on reusing as much of that as possible, so that they can really. They're not wasteful, right? They're trying to limit the amount of waste that they have, and therefore making their farm more sustainable. So when they harvest and they make everything, so they use 2 column stills and copper doublers. So their focus when they're to make their bourbon, and their rye and their whiskey. So when they're using those, their focus is on quality and consistency. So really that is one of their core beliefs. And I'll talk to you here a little bit about that in a minute. Their focus, their samples are taken during the process and frequently, and ensuring the highest level of quality. So during the entire process throughout, they said they're always sampling to making sure that the highest level of quality is there. There's a lot of technology that they have. They said that goes into the process as well. Every stage in the process relies on data to ensure that the product outputs are the highest quality levels. So again, going back to that quality topic, one of the things when I was reading through and doing research on the distillery was everything's focused on quality, quality, quality. It seems to me they would rather put out a quality product, spend more time on that product, spend more time making sure the grains are harvested appropriately, they're grown right, the bourbon and everything ferments properly, right? They're very focused on quality, so making sure all the quality ingredients are there. They're not looking to just put out, I hate to say like shelf bottles, right? But like you have a lot of shelf bottles that are out there in the world, and for consumers to purchase, and there's a place for that. But it doesn't seem like Southern Distilling is interested in that. They want to put out a quality product, no matter what it is, whether it's a lower priced bottle, and maybe something in their core lineup, or something that's higher priced and might be a special release. So quality is very key to them. And with the technology that they use, it constantly monitors and makes adjustments on the fly throughout the process. So if something's not right with the quality or throughout the process, the technology constantly is monitoring that and then making adjustments so that their quality is consistent. And it's to the highest levels as to what the Southern Distilling is looking for. So I thought it was also very, very interesting that they had 4 core beliefs posted on their website, which I'm going to read through these because I thought they were really interesting. And it's companies like this that post these things that I find are I want to do more business with. I also will say that a couple of articles I read, these beliefs are also shown in their distillery or throughout the distilling tour. You see these in places. So that tells me that not only do they preach it to their consumers, they believe that for their staff and for their workers. And it's something that every single day they probably wake up and look at that sign and say, hey, this is who we are. This is what we believe in. And this is really cool. So their first core belief is stay true to self, proud of where we're from, of what we do, and the spirits that they make. Based on what you see with the sustainability thing, with the quality topic, definitely something that I think is very important, right? And you can see that in their core belief. I love the second one. Give a damn. care deeply about three things: our people, our process, and our product. Just talked about all three of those things, right? I think that they're important to obviously anybody putting out a quality product nowadays. And with the bourbon market being where it's at, with it declining currently, I believe that the only thing that you are going to be able to stand on as a distillery in the future is your quality. Not saying that, non-quality or bad quality products are not going to be sold, but I think as the bourbon market's shifting, people are definitely becoming more keen on what they're buying, what they're purchasing. And therefore, I think that that's going to continue. I think that these smaller distilleries are going to continue to be successful and grow. And again, I've only had one product from them, and I will tell you, based on that one, I would be interested in trying more. I think they're fantastic. I think the product's great, and I think it definitely stands on its own, And for me to buy one single bottle and go, wow, this is really good, and say I would buy other ones, yeah, I think it's definitely speaks to what their core values are and what they believe in and what they're doing. Number 3 is Dare to Win. So before Prohibition, Statesville, North Carolina was the liquor capital of the world. They don't take that lightly. Their aim is to carry on that legacy and put North Carolina's best kept secret on the map. And that's pretty cool, man, right? So that's pride in where you come from. That's pride in the small town you live in. That's pride in your history, right? And making sure that you don't lose that piece of history. I think it's really interesting and something that definitely resonates to me, right? I'm very proud of where I live now. I'm very proud of where I come from. And I think people that have that pride in their community definitely makes a difference, to the growth of that community, and to the people that live in it. The last one is be grateful. So appreciation is at the core of who we are. We're grateful for those we serve, for those that we serve, for all that we have, and all the goals worth striving for. So that was really interesting as well too. So that gratefulness is there from them. So, and again, that really connects to your customers, right? Because me now as a customer reading that say, hey, they're grateful that I purchased a bottle. They don't know who the hell I am. I'm just Dram Amateur, right? I'm just some dude that has a small podcast and a small Instagram site, right? But I also feel like if you went to that distillery, I have a feeling that you would be greeted with open arms, that the tour would be amazing, that they would make you feel like you're at home. I've actually had a few people that I know on Instagram that have gone, and I have heard nothing but fantastic things about the distillery and the tour and the people and the town and everything. So definitely go check out Southern Distilling in Statesville, North Carolina, if that's something that you're interested in. Statesville is not too far from me, I don't believe. I have to look it up on the map. I looked it up before I started to do this episode, but definitely need to go check it out and learn a little bit more about them. So cheers to you guys, Southern Distilling. Keep doing what you're doing. I like the one product I've tried. I've heard other people like all the other ones too. So definitely interested in trying more and learning more about you guys as a distillery. Second one, let's go through. So Frey Ranch. So Frey Ranch is in Fallon, not North Carolina, Fallon, Nevada. So Frey Ranch has several different products. So they have a 4-grain straight bourbon. They have a bottled and bond rye. They have a single barrel bourbon. They have a single barrel rye. Those are the products I found on their website. That was, they might have others that I'm not aware of, but those are the ones. I will tell you that with Frey Ranch, so I have not had a pour of Frey Ranch yet. Hold on, have I? Maybe I have. I don't remember. I heard that so first of all, I bought a bottle and sent it off to one of my Instagram friends. The bottles are extremely heavy. The glass seems very, very thick. The bottle quality is amazing. Like just holding the product in your hand, it definitely feels like you have a solid product in your hand. I heard that now I don't believe I've had it myself, but I heard that the bourbon and the rye and everything, it really highlights the grains that they use. And that's really what they're focused on as a process. So I found that really interesting. So Frey Ranch Distillery was founded in 2006. So they're not that old. But the family that owns the ranch has been farming the land since 1854. So many, many years of farming the land. So you can see that experience into farming the land goes into obviously the quality of the grains that are grown, and then into the product that is produced from those grains, the bourbons, the rye, and etc. So it's a 2,000 acre farm in, like I said, Fallon, Nevada. They grow 100% of their whiskey grains on site. So where Southern Distilling was 96% of their grains were grown on site, 4% came from somewhere else. And I remember doing the research. I didn't talk about it in there, but the only reason the 4% comes from somewhere else is because they can't keep up with the growth of the grain to match the growth of the product. So they have to bring the product in from somewhere else. So in this case, Frey Ranch uses all of their whiskey grains are grown on site. So they're actually considered, because they grow all of their grains on site, they're actually considered a farm to glass distillery. So grain to glass would be where most of your grains are grown on site. Some of them may come from somewhere else. So that would be a grain to glass distillery. A farm to glass distillery is when 100% of the grains that you use to produce your product are grown on site, which I think is really neat. So that with that 100%, make me go through my notes. The grains are grown sustainably. They're mashed, malted, distilled, matured, and bottled at the ranch. So actually that's called ground to glass, which is interesting in my notes here. So Frey Ranch is considered a farm to glass distillery, but because they do all of those things, they actually consider it ground to glass. So pretty interesting to see the differences. All very similar, right? Most of the distilleries are growing most of their grains, and then they're using them. But the difference between Southern and Frey is Southern uses 96% of their own grains. They get 4% from somewhere else. And then Frey Ranch uses 100%. So that's where they get the farm to glass or ground to glass label assigned to them. So the process of all of this is really the backbone of who Frey Ranch is. And when they came up with their product, they wanted to be that way. That their family's motto is to be good to the land, and the land will be good to you, which makes sense, right? Think about what I talked about with the different soil and everything. If you continue to take care of the land, take care of the soil, treat it the right way, give it the right opportunities for growth, the growing product or growing the grains, right? Then you're obviously making a quality grain that goes into the quality of your distilling process and what you're making. So really interesting. So Frey Ranch, so they were approved to start making whiskey in 2006. But state laws to govern commercial distilling were not enacted till 2013. So think about that. So that's 7 years from when they were approved to start making whiskey to when they were actually, the state of Nevada had laws put in place for commercial distilling until 2013. So that's a 7-year time period. So during that time, it really allowed the owners of the distillery to focus on perfecting their craft by experimenting with different mash bills, yeast, distillation techniques, etc. And they weren't able to obviously make something, age it for 2 years, and then throw it on the market. They had to put time and effort into that, so they spent that time to focus on perfecting their craft, which was really interesting. With what I said, they knew that when they had to wait, they had agreed. They made an agreement to themselves, focusing on the quality, that no product that they would release that they would release would be less than 5 years. So when they started in 2006, they had the impact of not being able to sell anything until 2013. So that commercial distilling law was in place. So then they looked at themselves and said, hey, look, we're going to focus on quality. We're going to focus on what we do. We're going to make sure we're perfecting what we want to make. And they said, therefore, they made a promise to themselves that they were not going to sell any product until it hit an average age of 5 years, which was really interesting to me as well. So they were focused, again, on quality product that showcased their grains. One of the uniquenesses of making the bourbon and the whiskey in the ranches, they're actually at 4,000 feet in Nevada, and what happens is that actually supports the quality of the final product. So hot summers and cold winters, along with drastic swings in temperatures, impacts how the whiskey reacts with the wood in the barrel, right? If you think about it, if you're in a very, very hot climate, everything's going to expand, seep into the wood. If you're in a colder climate, that whiskey will then come back out of the wood and then come back into the barrel. That happens numerous times, so that's why the climate changes. The whiskey will go in and out of the wood in the barrel, and it has that impact, therefore, from the barrel. So they do need to use humidifiers in the warehouses, since Nevada is one of the driest states in the U.S. So I thought that was really interesting as well. That they had to use humidities, not heat cycled facilities like Old Forester, right, where they maintain the heat levels or have them higher than normal, but they actually have to add humidity because it's too dry in the warehouse. So one of the benefits, though, with living with having the farm in a dry environment is that it helps to benefit the crops, because there's no fungicide has to be used on them to control mildew, fungus, and mold. So then you're growing a product that doesn't need that fungicide on it. So that impacts the quality of your grains. So you don't have to worry about that. Frey Ranch and the distillery, they believe that the peak age of their whiskey will be the 8 to 10 year mark. They're pretty close, right? If they could start distilling in 2006, couldn't sell till 2013. I would imagine that's 7 years. And then 2013 and 2024, it's another 11 years. They should start having some product in that 8 to 10 year range. That's available. What they do with that, not quite sure, but they are focused on growth. So definitely by the end of 2022, based on my research, the distillery was expecting to produce 960,000 bottles of whiskey. And in 2023 had plans of expanding operations to increase production by 50%. So you're talking another 450 to 470,000 bottles of whiskey. So really interesting to see that, and to see what they're producing. So pretty cool, to do that. So increasing, they're definitely growing, right? And this is where I go back to, the change in the bourbon world, right, is that these distilleries are changing. The consumer is changing. And I'm starting to see more of these grain to glass offerings. Think about Heaven Hill just released a whole grain to glass series as well. And I think there's more of this. So as we try to live in a more sustainable world and in a sustainable environment and contribute to limiting, obviously, our impact on the environment, we find these ways to be sustainable. And with, I think that these grain to glass or farm to glass distilleries, I think what you're finding is that they're able to control everything from the soil that the crop is grown in, to the quality of the crop is grown, to the harvesting methods, right? And then maintaining the quality of that soil over time for future growth and future opportunity of growing and future quality on other product, right? And then it goes into the quality of the product that they're making. So they're very then focused on that, right? Where you can cut corners and do things faster, and do things easier, right? And to make more money and put more product out. But more product doesn't always mean quality, and more product does not always mean consumers will buy it because it's more readily available. I think most consumers would turn to product that it has the quality that they're looking for, has the passion that goes into those bottles, highlights the grains that are being used to grow. And therefore, because you're getting, you know where the grains are coming from, You know the quality of the product that goes into it. Therefore, you're buying a bottle that you know somebody's blood, sweat, and tears went into from start to finish, right? And I think that's pretty cool. And in this bourbon world that's getting so oversaturated with new distilleries popping up, new processes popping up, old ways of doing things, but it's all allocated and hyper, not available. It's very limited to everybody. It's nice to have some different opportunities to try different product for somebody that really gives a damn. And I'm not saying your Buffalo Traces don't give a damn and stuff like that, right? But it's a very different process. I don't know where they're getting their corn from. I don't know where they're getting their grains from. I don't know the quality of the grains, right? Their product's great, right? But you're not having somebody that potentially goes into the effort that Frey Ranch and Southern Distilling does to make their product. And therefore, I think it's a really cool story and a really cool kind of like a really cool product that they're producing. And it makes me want to try it more. So like where I think I've had a pour of Frey Ranch, but I haven't, like I really want to try Frey Ranch now. I want to see what it's like and I want to know all about it. Southern Distilling, I had the one bottle and I absolutely love it, right? And I want to try more. It makes me want to go to Statesville and tour the facility. So cheers to you guys, right? Keep doing what you're doing. There's more and more of these types of distilleries popping up across the U.S. and globally as well. So keep doing what you're doing. Keep investing in your product, your people, your community, the environment. I think we're all a little bit better from that. So thank you guys. All right, so that's it. That's going to do it for this episode of the Dram Amateur Podcast. Thank you guys all so much for listening today. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to releasing this episode and more. So thanks for everything. Thanks for listening. If you don't already, follow me on Instagram oh my goodness. It's a Monday and my brain's not functioning. At Dram_Amateur. That's where you can find me and all of my pictures and stories and all of those different things on Instagram. But cheers to you guys. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great rest of your day. Talk to you soon. Thank you for tuning into the Dram Amateur Podcast. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the world of spirits. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. I certainly appreciate all the feedback and support. Stay tuned for more exciting episodes as we continue our exploration of bourbon, whiskey, rum, tequila, mezcal, and beyond. Cheers, and until next time, keep savoring every sip.